In many ways, the birth of the modern pornography industry can be dated back to the early 1950s and the first issue of Playboy magazine, although some could well argue Renaissance art, even cave paintings were the pornography of their day. Since then, thanks largely to technology from DVDs and now the internet, it has grown into a global business worth, they estimate, about $60 billion a year. In Australia alone, estimated to be around $1.5 billion every year on porn. For years, morals crusaders and religious leaders have railed against the evils of pornography and been dismissed by some as wowsers. Now there's a new wave of anti-porn campaigners warning of a dark underside to this industry that is affecting our very culture. They argue the exploitation of women is also poisoning the spirit of young men, who are the majority consumers of the stuff, leading to exploitation and sexualisation of children as well. Melinda Tankard Reist is the editor of a new book called Big Porn Inc. and she joins us now in our Canberra studio. Melinda, welcome.
Thanks, John.
First of all, I suppose pornography, it's always been very different things to different people. Some things that I might condemn as pornography, or you might, perhaps just erotica or art to somebody else. For the purpose of your book and this discussion, what should we understand pornography to be?
The book draws out the current nature of pornography, the real content of pornography, which is objectifying and sexualising women, primarily women, for sexual purposes, for sexual pleasure. And we look at the nature of this in terms especially of violence, of degradation, of the way that women are depicted in pornography, the violent acts, and the normalising of sexual abuse and sexual violence that goes with this. You know, a lot of people have an idea that pornography is just, naughty pictures of sex between consenting adults, and it's moved on from that. It is so much more than that. And so this book unmaps, has a look at that broader landscape and talks about the harm that's resulting.
You look at the more extreme examples and the damage that has on individuals who are perhaps coerced into taking part in the production of that pornography, and also the consumers of it and how it damages their relationships and their own sexuality. But do you draw a distinction between what I suppose people would consider to be low-level pornography, just naked people, as opposed to the kind of way out stuff that's particularly available on the internet that most people would say is obscene, illegal, immoral? The
point is that the extreme is now mainstream. The hardcore is now normal. This is the stuff that young people are exposed to. We know that 70% of boys are exposed to porn by the age of 12, 100% by the age of 15. And they're being introduced to very calloused and brutal versions of sex and sexuality. I'm hearing from younger women that are describing the kind of things that the boys in their lives want them to do. And much of it is based on the scripts that they have learned from pornography. They think girls want to be hit and slapped and hurt and have their hair pulled and called whores and mistreated. And this is the sad thing that we discovered in doing this book, is that a lot of boys think that the sexual scripts they're learning from pornography are just regular, normal versions of sexuality and how to treat women. So boys are being socialised and conditioned into brutal, calloused versions of masculinity. And people that are working with girls are reporting that girls are more likely now to put up with sexual assault, to put up and think it's normal to be mistreated and demeaned. So the extreme is now mainstream.
What are the alternatives when it comes to limiting that more extreme content, which is not legal to be produced in magazines, for instance? It's not the kind of stuff that you can get from the convenience store or the servo. That's the kind of stuff that is only on the internet, and yet the technology that enables that to be ubiquitous online doesn't enable us to filter these things out. Blacklists are out of date as soon as they're drawn up by ISPs. Is there something that can be done?
Well, actually, I have to correct you. Much of this material is in the corner store, the 7-Elevens, the milk bars, the McDonald's fuel zones. We've documented that. Extreme content promoting rape and incest and sexual activity with minors, depicting minors, young girls, as wanting to be penetrated multiple ways by multiple men. This stuff is in the corner store.
I've never seen child pornography in my corner store, though.
We've documented that. We've got hundreds and hundreds of examples, and the classification system in this country is not working at all. But leaving that to one side, yet we do think there should be some regulation. We don't think that pornography, which incites crimes of violence against women and girls, should just be unfettered. We don't think that the big porn industry, the global porn industry, worth $100 billion in the US alone, should be able to do whatever they want. And, you know, again, we've documented the kind of pornography that is being given, you know, so-called free speech protection. We think free speech should be fair speech, and speech which harms, which leads to violence against women, needs some kind of regulation, some kind of restriction.
Melinda, it's Fran here, Fran Kelly.
Yes, Fran.
But it is, no one, I think, thinks pornography should be allowed to go unfettered or uncensored. And
Well, it is unfettered.
Well, it's not. There is a regulation system here. Child porn is not legally sold here. It's not sold in the sex shops either legally, but it is available on the internet, for instance, and that is a real problem. How do we, given that there is, we will never get rid of pornography. I mean, as I think Kerry mentioned earlier, you know, just go to Pompeii and look what's written on some of the walls from way back then. We're never going to get rid of pornography, and most people, I think, don't necessarily want to get rid of at least what people might call soft porn or erotica. But the issue is with the avalanche of porn and violent porn and extreme porn available through the internet, what can we do as a community to try and offset that so that young people are getting... should we be working on the other side of the ledger and looking at how we work with young kids about respect?
Sure. Absolutely. Look, it needs a multifaceted approach. What this book tries to do is outline the problem, the harm that's being caused, the contribution to sexual assault, to calloused attitudes towards women, to treating women as mere sexual service stations for men and boys. So we lay out the problem. In terms of what should we do, we do support education, we do support respect programs where boys are taught to respect women and to not mistreat them and not to think that this is how women and girls, generally speaking, want to be treated. But we also need, we do need tighter regulation. The fact is that children are being exposed prematurely to sexual imagery, and this is not just me saying this. The Australian Crime Commission produced a report that talked about the rise of child-on-child sexual assault as a result of overexposure to sexual imagery. And so, you know, it's impossible for parents on their own to regulate this. We do need our regulatory bodies to step up to the plate, and so far they have failed to do so. But as I said, it has to happen on many different levels. This book is pushing for resistance. It's pushing for a new wave of resistance, and we document resistance around the globe, including significant resistance being led by men. For example, the anti-porn project in the UK. A lot of men are saying, you know, we don't want to accept this version of sexuality for our lives. We're not like that. We don't want to be seen to be like that. We're seeking out authentic, intimate relationships based on equality and respect. So that's been encouraging for us to see that.
Question or a comment, Peter?
The only thing that strikes me is there was a debate about 12 months ago now about the net filter. Is that part of the solution to this?
Look, most of us in the book believe that at least should be given a try. It's been trialled and seems to be working effectively in other countries. We do think that child porn should be filtered out, and extreme versions of violence and sadism and torture porn. You know, a lot of people really don't realise the kind of stuff that it needs to be filtered out and would be illegal in any other format in this country. We do think the internet should be brought into line with what already applies to, say, films, television, books and magazines.
So can I just... Hi, it's Kerry here. So you would look... I mean, in terms of... You can't possibly classify stuff on the internet. That's the problem that you've got, because it's just too difficult to do. One assumes technically too difficult to do. So, I mean, the problem with the filters is that, as, you know, Fran said, most of them don't work. I mean, what sort of legislation would you be looking for? Would you actually be looking to... Because, I mean, one of the problems you've got is that a lot of this stuff is actually offshore. It's very hard to track who's actually, you know, distributing it. Would you be looking at legislation which would prosecute the providers for actually providing this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. They should be prosecuted. They're contributing to an atmosphere, a climate of violence against women and children. Why should they have free rein? Why should they be able to do what they want to do? And that's the problem. They've been getting away with it for too long. And I disagree with you that it doesn't work. This is part of the anti-filter spin from vested interests who don't want it trialled, who don't want it been shown to be effective in any way, shape or form, because they're used to having it their way too long. And it has been working effectively in other places. Why not give it a go here? I don't need to call for legislation. There's already a draft proposal on the table, and we'd like to see Labor go ahead with that, and we'd like to see the coalition to step up to the plate too and not support the agenda of the global pornography industry on this.
Melinda, we're nearly out of time, but I want to talk very quickly about the trickle-down of pornography into mainstream culture and the way that other forms of media, advertising and so on play on the porn industry, and the argument that says, well, if you can't see naked people in mainstream magazines, of course you'll go to these hardcore websites. Where do you stand on that?
Oh, look, we have seen the mainstreaming of pornography at every level of society and culture. The values of pornography, the values of the sex industry has seeped into mainstream culture at every level. And, you know, I've documented this in my third book, Getting Real, Challenging the Sexualisation of Girls. Porn values have become mainstreamed and wallpapered. Everywhere you look, we see objectified, hypersexualised images of women being presented as always up for it, wanting sex all the time, wanting to be mistreated and abused. And children are absorbing this, young people are absorbing this. And so, you know, we want to see that changed as well. And we have had 4 inquiries so far and not one recommendation acted on. An inquiry into the sexualisation of children, 2 inquiries into the classification system, one is ongoing, and an inquiry into the advertising and outdoor industry. We'd like to see at least 1 recommendation acted on.
Time's against us, Melinda, but thanks very much for joining us. Melinda Tankard Reist, the author of Porn Inc. Thanks very much to my guests tonight, Fran Kelly, Kerry Chikarovsky and Peter Lewis. You can check out the website abc.net.au/The Drum.
And go the Wallabies.
And go the Wallabies.